I'm Matt Reynolds, and this is my podcast.
I can do the job, but running the business is quite difficult. What a lot of tradesmen lack, and I was probably one of them, is business skills.
I don't mind making mistakes. You learn from your mistakes.
Information is all around you in the minds of people that work beside you.
This is episode 9 of Trench Talk. I'm Matt Reynolds, and this is the podcast where we go into the trenches and talk, not with people who are orchestrating from up high, but to those who are actually in the trenches honing their craft. That may be in the world of business, sport, entertainment, anyone who's on the front lines doing amazing things. This morning, I sat down with Steve McKnight, who is recognised as one of Australia's foremost authorities on property investment as a means of creating personal wealth. Steve holds a Bachelor of Business in accounting, is a chartered accountant, and began his career working in audit at Deloitte before starting his own accounting practice in 1999. Steve's plan was simple: use property investing to replace his accounting income. So in that same year, 99, he purchased his first place in Ballarat, about an hour and a half out of Melbourne. Since then, on average, Steve has bought or sold a property every 9 or so days. He co-founded propertyinvesting.com, a property education website, and his first book, From Zero to 130 Properties in 3.5 years, remains Australia's all-time #1 best-selling business book by an Australian author. He's developed his own property along the way and is now chairman of a managed investment fund that owns commercial property in the United States of America. To be totally transparent, I'm an investor and the performance has been impressive. You can find out more at passiveincomefund.com. Steve and I discussed his property investing and business journey, some of his key thoughts on money management, investing $150 million internationally, strategies he uses to keep his own ego in check, and how he puts together business partnerships to ensure the best chance of success. If you'd like to know more about Steve and his investment philosophies, then you can check him out at, not surprisingly, propertyinvesting.com. Enjoy my chat with Steve McKnight. Steve McKnight, thanks for doing this.
Hey, Matt, you're welcome.
Now, we're in the propertyinvesting.com offices here in Melbourne. There's a lot going on here. I was a bit surprised, actually, when I walked in, how many people are sitting down, tapping away and typing away. How do you describe for someone who hasn't met you before all the facets of what comes out of this building?
Well, one of the hardest questions anyone can ask me is, Steve, what do you do? Because back when I worked as an accountant, it's very easy to say to someone, I'm an accountant, and they've got a frame of reference. Right, I know what an accountant does. So you do tax returns, or do you do auditing, or something like that? People have a familiarity with it. But when you say to someone that you're a professional investor, it kind of sounds like, well, what does that mean? You sit and watch the cricket all day long? Or sometimes I'll say to people, I play Monopoly in real life, the board game. Other times I'll say to people, look, I got out of accounting and just tried to find something to bring money through the door and ended up doing investing. But here at propertyinvesting.com, well, certainly this building, we run 2 businesses out of it. We run a business which trains people on how to use real estate to create wealth along the principles that I have learned and founded myself over the course of nearly 20 years of investing in real estate around the world. And we also run a managed investment business, which for people who don't want to or can't invest for themselves, we offer some outlets to invest collectively.
And there's the propertyinvesting.com is an education business which has a number of facets within it.
Well, propertyinvesting.com started off because I, with my business partner Dave Bradley at the time, early 2000s, had been somewhat successful in our real estate investing. And we had people coming to us and saying, look, you guys seem to know what you're doing. Can you teach us as well? And so we said, well, sure. And then we started running an occasional seminar, and then that fed into a website, propertyinvesting.com, and then I had a publisher come to me and say, Steve, would you write a book? And that was From Zero to 130 Properties in 3.5 years, which then fed back into the website. And we found that the more training we did and the more people who knew about us, the more money would come through the door, which would allow us to go and buy more real estate. So it was almost a snowball effect that we'd buy more real estate. People would want to know how we could afford so much real estate. We'd run training, which would give us more capital to buy more real estate. So today, propertyinvesting.com is a website that offers online training. And I used to do more seminars than I do now, only because I'm doing other things in life. But we typically run a once-a-year big event that we call our Millionaire Mega Conference.
And what does that involve?
That's a 3-day event. and it involves myself and a couple of other speakers coming together and talking about what's going on in the property market and what other opportunities are there out there to accelerate your income, and hopefully not only the nuts and bolts of investing, but a little bit of a life wake-up call around motivation, inspiration. So in years gone by, we've had Mao's Last Answer, Lee Shung Sing, come and talk about how he led an inspirational life. We've had Diana Nightingale, Earl Nightingale's wife. Earl's not with us anymore, but come on and share about a guy who ran the largest wealth creation company in the 1940s and 1950s. And more recently, Dan Flynn from the Thank You Group came and talked about how he took a concept, turned it into bottled water, and then is running philanthropic projects around the world. So what I say to people all the time, Matt, is that investing isn't your life. Investing is a subset of your life. And if you've got problems in life, you'll have investing problems. So if you want to gain clarity with your investing, you really need to get your life sorted out. Sometimes people say to me, oh, if only I had more money, my life would be easier. Whereas what I've found is that people with small money problems, when they've got a small amount of money, will have big money problems when they've got a big amount of money. So what I like to say to people is, you want money to be your slave and you be its master. You don't want to be a slave to money, which is sort of one of my new business ventures that's just starting off the ground now, is a website called moneymaster.com.
Oh, I didn't know about this.
It's a bit pre-investing and trying to help people to get the skills and mindset necessary to master money and not be a slave to it.
So I think it's starting to become more publicised now that there's not a lot of money education in schools, so we can exit the education system and really know what we're doing. Are you saying that this website fits in, or that business fits in that space there?
A little bit. Look, I think there's lots of books out there on budgeting and money management 101, and I don't think the world needs another budgeting book.
Yeah.
I think what the world probably needs is a bit of a wake-up call that maybe our thoughts and attitudes around money that we've kind of picked up along the way, either by friends or family, and I call that money influences, or our money programming, which is just how we use money, isn't actually leading us to an outcome that we're happy with. You know, the saying is, the more you do of what you've done, the more you get of what you've got. So if you keep playing the money game the way you're playing it at the moment, you will have more of what you have already. And for most people, they're not happy with that. They want something different. Well, if you want something different, you've got to change. And I think it's not about going and just buying a great piece of real estate and everything will be all right. You've got to change these habits, thoughts around money first, and then you'll find your investing a lot easier. I mean, I've spent the last 20 years showing people how to make money out of real estate, but sometimes people will make a lot of money, but they're not a lot happier. Or they'll make a lot of money and they'll lose a lot of money because they make it, but then they spend it. They don't keep it. So it's some of these foundational issues that I'm finding I'm a little bit more passionate about than showing people how to make $100,000 out of a property deal and then hoping that life's all right.
What do you see most common with people in their, when they start out, they've got to get their money and, I suppose, goals aligned? Is there any common thing that you see that we're missing?
Yeah, as difficult as it is to answer, I think money only makes sense if it's got a reason. Again, the thought is, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I know if I had more money, I'd be happier. Well, that's different to having a reason for having money and then figuring out how to get there. For instance, you may decide that you want to support a life-saving organisation down at the beach somewhere and that they need a new piece of equipment that's going to cost $100,000. And so now in your brain, you think, right, how can I raise $100,000? What can I do to get that $100,000? How can I invest in real estate? So the outcome provides a context for how you go about generating the money.
Yep.
Versus, I just want $100,000, I don't have any real purpose for it, and I don't really care how it comes, doesn't give you a context for your investing. And one of the mistakes I see people make is they just keep doing what they're doing, as I've mentioned, because they want more money, but they don't know why they want more money. They just think it'll make them happier, and it doesn't. It's a myth. Having more money doesn't make people happier. don't get me wrong, I say money can't buy happiness, but it can buy business class, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's something nice about sitting in business class or having a nice car or a nice house. But sooner or later, the inner need of your soul can't be fed by money. It has to be fed by one of two things. It needs to be fed by accomplishment, which means like you add meaning to your life, or it needs to be met by service, which is what you can do for other people.
Okay.
And if you don't have those things in your life, I think that sooner or later you just feel unfulfilled. It leads to a crisis of some sort, like you're not doing something worthwhile.
It's harder to work out what you're doing, is what you're saying, than how to get there.
It's harder to find a reason for doing something. And this might be an insight for the people listening along, Matt. It was around 2006, and I was going through a bit of a life crisis. My father-in-law was passing away with prostate cancer. I was I'd achieved a lot in real estate already, and money wasn't a motivating factor for me anymore. And I was asking myself, what do you do in life if you don't have to worry about money? Particularly in the midst of a bit of a personal crisis within a family. I was sitting down with a mentor of mine, a guy by the name of Brendan Nichols, which I highly recommend anyone listening to this Google, Brendan Nichols. Brendan is a guy who's been in the wealth creation industry for a long, long time, and he's helped me at a personal level on many occasions. And I was with Bren up in Coffs Harbour, and we're just sitting on the headland overlooking the ocean talking about this. And I said, Bren, why is it that people give up? Often people make a little bit of progress and then they throw their hands in the air and they retreat. They go back to the way things were. And we bounced around some ideas, and in the end we decided that people give up when the pain of going forward is greater than the pain of going back. So one of the ways to prevent yourself from backsliding is to create such a painful experience that the pain of going back is greater than the pain of going forward.
Yep.
And that's what I did with accounting, and I hated accounting so much. It's not that I was bad at it. It was just so stressful.
Yeah.
That there was a lot of pain associated with letting go of the security of an accounting career and moving into something that I didn't know how to do. But compared to the pain of staying in accounting, it was not as great. So that kept me going forward. Well, coming back here, unless people have a reason for doing something that gives a context for the hard work and the sacrifice that's necessary for success, then it's like a diet. After a month or two and you've lost a little bit of weight, you go back to eating chocolate. Yep. After one or two good investments, and then all of a sudden you've got a bank account with $250,000 in it, you think, well, my life's pretty good now. I will go and buy something and fill my life with stuff that doesn't really matter. And again, to quote from Brendan for a second here, the enemy of a great life is a good life. So what happens is people make a little bit of progress, they end up with a good life, but they never get to a great life because then they settle for lukewarm. So what I'm about is helping people understand that money is a tool. Like any tool, it is only useful in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. And if it's in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to use it, then it might actually cause some damage. So we're not born great drivers, most of us, or born great guitar players, or born exceptional husbands or wives. We need skill. Money's no different. And what I've found is the more skill someone has around money, the better they are with making it multiply. And similarly, the less skill they have, the less able they are to make it multiply. But it seems to me that when it comes to money, and coming back to your point before about it not being taught in school, it's expected that you're good at it, but that's an unrealistic expectation because you've never been trained properly in how to use it.
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
And even accountants, Matt, they know debits and credits, and a financial planner can come up with a plan for you, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily know it themselves or are living it. They've just learned it, but they're not applying it.
What you're saying is that you need to ensure that you keep progressing. You need to build that into your plan. And do you do that? Which end do you do that on? Do you do it by building, you said, a painful experience in, or can you also build it at the other end about going for a bigger goal?
I think what I'm saying is if you don't have a reason for doing something other than you think you want more money and that'll make you happy, the best you can hope for is a little bit of progress. And then because it's so much effort and sacrifice to keep going, you'll decide you don't want to do that anymore.
Yep.
And you'll plateau.
Yep.
Versus someone who has a real reason for doing it and is motivated by a really strong conviction, either a pain event, because they don't want to relapse into how life was, or a pain event, because if they don't achieve this goal, then something awful is going to happen. Then that becomes your motivation and your driving force to aim for extraordinary rather than average.
Okay.
I have a good friend of mine. His name's Tom Ziegler, who is the son of Zig Ziglar, who's no longer with us. Yep. And I said it to Tom this way. We were out at in a remote location, just he and I, chilling out and having a chat. And I said, Tom, he had this goal that he wanted to achieve, but he wasn't sure if he really wanted to achieve it, or how to go about it. And I said, look, Tom, if I was to kidnap your daughter and hold a gun to her head and say that unless you achieve this goal, she's going to die, what would you do that you wouldn't otherwise do? What level of urgency or what level of action? How would you go above and beyond rather than just sitting here twiddling your thumbs? And of course, that might be a bad example, but at that time, what it tried to do for Tom was to jog him out or jolt him out of his malaise of mindset into, yeah, if I really want to do this, then I am going to have to sacrifice and I am going to put off things that I would otherwise. And there's going to be some effort and probably some pain. And do I really want to do it? And if the answer is no, then why bother even starting?
Is that a strategy of yours, to find mentors and take them to remote locations? And
it seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think a strategy of mine is to decide that if I'm going to do something, then do it.
Yeah.
Don't procrastinate. Don't spend too much time in analysis paralysis. Okay, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're doing it. And how do we get it done?
Yep.
That's a conversation I like to have with people. So when I mentor people, which I don't do a lot of anymore, but when I do and when I did mentor people, I would say there's no time for willy-nilly. We're on a time frame here. We've got an objective. What do we need to do to make this happen? What do you need to do in the next day, in the next week, in the next month?
Yep.
So that when we meet up in a day, a week, or a month's time, you've progressed. Because, again, a saying, and I'm full of sayings, but to cease to move forward is to start to backslide, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not moving forward, if you're not making progress, if you're not learning something new every day, if you're not sucking the marrow out of life, what are you doing? You're just occupying space. Well, no one gets to their deathbed and says, I wish I had worked an extra day in the office, or I wish I had bought another piece of real estate. Most people say, I wish I had taken more risks and I wish I had done something more meaningful with my life. Don't wait till you're on your deathbed to have that revelation. Just have it now and be extraordinary. That's the gift that you've got. Don't aim for ordinary, aim for extraordinary. And if you fail, you'll end at ordinary. If you aim for ordinary and fail, you'll end at anti-ordinary or below normal or subpar, and that's nothing to aspire towards.
This thing comes up in all these conversations, that you're really not here for all that long, and you just have to get busy and you have to work hard and you have to get, off your seat and get to work and get it done, because we all run out of time, right?
Or not. Like if you're not a particularly motivated person and you don't care, then that's all right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But just don't.
Fair call.
Don't then expect to be a motivating person around other people. Like I sometimes hear parents say, oh, geez, I wish my kids would do something more than sit around watching a computer screen. And I say, well, what are you doing other than sitting around looking at a computer screen? And they're like, holy cow, you're right. We don't go out anymore. That's all we do. I said, look, the kids will just do what they've seen you do.
That's another thing that keeps coming up in these conversations as well.
To me, it's about leadership, and leadership starts with vision, and vision starts from within, not without. I mean, I can't say to you, Matt, I've got a great vision for your life, because I'm not living your life.
Yeah, true.
You have to find what it is that you want to do. The Bible says without a vision, the people perish. And that's not necessarily in a shipwreck kind of way. I think that's in a soul kind of way. People just, because as you get older, it becomes harder to take a risk because you're worried that you're going to lose what you've got.
Yeah.
So that's the gift of youth, is let's get out there and get going, and we don't care if we fail because time's on our side. Well, as you get older, you don't want to lose your capital and time's not on your side anymore. So you're becoming more risk averse. That's why you got to make hay while the sun shines and you're younger.
Yeah.
Or if you're older, you have to sort of figure out that maybe I've wasted a bit of time and there's not that much more time to waste, so I better get busy.
At risk of asking you a question you probably get asked every day, the property market in Australia, we're in July 2017. How do you see the market at the moment?
Well, real estate is a function of delivering a necessity in life, which is shelter. And there is an element of that which is discretionary and an element of that which is necessity. So the discretionary element is a holiday house, a fancy house in a fancy suburb.
A pool, second garage, yep.
A discretionary, a necessity part of it is public housing. People need a place to live.
Yep.
So if we look at the property market at the moment, the first thing I would say is that so long as people live in houses, there's always a way to make money out of real estate.
Okay, yep.
It doesn't matter if the market is up or the market is down. See, people say to me, I can't wait for property prices to crash. And I say, why is that? And the answer is, well, I'm going to get out there and buy a bargain. And I say, well, how are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to go to the bank and borrow. No, you're not. I was there in the United States in 2009.
They weren't lending money.
In the midst of a property crash, and the banks weren't lending. Their balance sheets were so upside down. They were in management crisis mode. No one was lending. Yeah. So unless you've got very deep pockets, even a house that is $1 million comes up for sale for $500,000 and you think it's a roll gold bargain, how many houses do you think you're going to buy?
Yeah.
One.
Yep.
Then your $500,000's gone.
Yep.
So would you rather be investing in a time when property prices were crashing? No.
Yeah, of course.
Or
not,
a time when property prices are booming? Yes.
Yeah.
So to me, the fact that the market is high and very probably overvalued by some measure, it's still a better time to be investing when the market's crashing and everyone's running for the exits and unemployment's through the roof and unfortunately crime goes up, suicides go up and depression levels hit. People losing their jobs, can't afford to send their kids to private school anymore, can't afford to go on a holiday. All the things that we take for granted in a property boom that dry up very, very quickly. The last thing people are normally thinking about doing is investing.
Yeah.
So I say to people, enjoy the boom while you've got it and do something with a tailwind rather than a headwind.
Okay.
Because investing will become a lot harder when it becomes harder to invest.
Of course, yeah.
But when it's easier to invest, investing is a lot easier. I mean, one of the easiest ways of making money, Matt, at any time is to find a trend that's moving in your favour and just jump on it.
Yeah.
And while the property market's going up, that's a trend that's moving in your favour. Now, that's not to say that people should run out and just buy something. See, investing is a strategy-orientated activity. If you don't know what you're doing, then you're speculating, you're not investing. And speculation is akin to gambling. Investing is about having a plan, and that plan is written down and that you understand the assumptions behind your investing model, that you've tested the validity of those assumptions and that the upside is greater than the downside by enough of a margin for you to want to go ahead. But if you haven't measured the upside and you haven't measured the downside and you've got no idea of what margin you need, then you're not investing like a professional skilled investor. You're investing like a novice or a speculator. Now, I have a saying, surprise, surprise, that the more things you leave to chance, the more chance there is that things will go wrong.
Yeah.
So if you're out there right now at a peak or near peak of a market cycle buying something and your strategy is, I hope it goes up, then you're positioning yourself for loss.
Yeah.
How can you outcompete a professional investor if you don't have the skill, the time, the risk or the money that they have? You can't.
Yeah.
And so you shouldn't even attempt it. I mean, arbitrage in real estate market is hard to find. So in the absence of that, that's where people should maybe consider, is there someone better who can do it for me?
Okay.
Or if the answer is no, you have to commit to getting the skills necessary to being able to invest like a professional investor.
So you need to understand, if you're going to go invest in anything, you are taking on professionals that do this day in, day out. and you need to put yourself in a position where to give yourself a chance at winning.
The best property deals are bought and sold off market.
Okay.
So
that is true, because you hear that a bit.
If you go on realestate.com.au,
Yep.
after a day's work at 9 o'clock at night with a glass of red wine,
Yeah.
how do you envisage out finding and buying a piece of real estate with a professional investor who all they do all day, every day is look at realestate.com.au or Domain or whatever other website it is, plus they call up the real estate agents every week, what new deals are coming on the market? Can I get through it now before it hits the market?
Yep.
You might find a good deal once or twice, but are you going to do it consistently? The answer is probably no.
Yeah.
So the idea is, if I can't compete with the experts, how do I become like an expert? Or how can I get an expert to invest my money for me and I don't have the same headaches that I would otherwise have? Now, that comes at a cost, because an expert, if they're willing to do it for you, will take a clip of the profit.
Yeah.
That's why they're making the opportunity available. But that may still be better than the alternative, which, if it's speculating or investing like a novice, just places you at a lot of risk.
So you've been, by any criteria, a pretty successful real estate investor, right, over a long period of time. You started in, was it 99? You started buying in Ballarat?
Yep.
You went through New Zealand?
Yep.
Was it Tassie next?
No, so we started off in Ballarat,
Yep.
and at the time we were buying commission houses in Ballarat and then reselling them on vendor finance. And as the market went up, and our system was, in order for it to work, you had to be able to own the home with the vendor finance payment, which was less than the rent you'd otherwise pay to rent the property.
Can you just explain vendor finance for anyone that doesn't understand?
So vendor finance is, I buy a house and I sell it to you and act as the bank, and you make your repayments to me and I make my repayments to the bank, and my repayments to the bank are less than your repayments to me, so I make a cash flow margin on the difference.
And the reason someone would go to you instead of a bank is that the banks won't lend them money.
Well,
is that right?
Particularly back in the sort of late 1990s, you had to have a deposit. There was
Yep.
the pre-first home buyer days, and people had good credit, but they didn't have a deposit. So what we would do is allow people to get into a house with $1,000 or $2,000 down.
Right.
They would then use us to finance for a couple of years. Then they'd pay us out, and once they had a credit history and a loan repayment record, they would then just go with cheaper finance elsewhere.
So you were just getting them through, the first 12, 18 months, 2 years period? Or?
Yeah, as it worked out, some less, some more, around 3 to 5 years.
Okay. So you then went to, but your strategy has changed. So the overall question of this, your journey around the world, is that you've used different strategies in different places, but you've been successful at every stop, right? Nowhere has been a disaster, has it?
So, Matt, remember the saying, so long as people live in houses, you can make money out of real estate.
Yes.
The way you make money out of real estate will change as the market changes.
Yep.
So back in the late 1990s, there was an opportunity to run the vendor finance model that we did.
Yep.
Because it was a win-win outcome. People got a house and they paid less than they would otherwise have paid to rent it.
Yes.
3 years later, they pay us out, they move on in life.
Yep.
They're ahead of the game. The problem was house prices went up.
Yep.
So now we couldn't run the model where the repayment was less than the rent. Now the payment was equal to the rent or more than the rent, and we decided we didn't want to do it anymore.
Yep.
So then Dave Bradley and I moved into looking to buy units in Tassie.
Okay.
And then after we couldn't do it in Tassie anymore, Dave and I looked at each other and went, what about New Zealand? Well, we don't know anything about New Zealand. Well, let's jump on a plane and go and do a real estate investing seminar in New Zealand. And it's a good story, this one, so I don't mind telling it. We were at this seminar and they were talking about all the different aspects to investing in real estate in New Zealand. And at the end of the seminar, we went up to the person running it. We said, thank you for all the information. That was fantastic. Where wouldn't you invest? Where are some places that
interesting, yeah.
you wouldn't invest with stolen money? And the guy said, look, I've got two areas that I wouldn't invest. One's called Huntley, the other one's called Tokoroa. And we said, why wouldn't you? Oh, look, the tenants are going to trash the property. It's low socioeconomic area. It's more hassle than it's worth. Now, remember, Dave and I had cut our teeth in investing in West Wendouree, Ballarat, which was poor area, tenants are going to trash it, shopping trolleys on the nature strip, etc. So, of course, we jumped in the car. First place we went Huntley, second place we went Tokoroa. And we ended up buying properties between $20,000 and $40,000 a piece, held them for, I think, 12 to 18 months and sold them for twice or more of the price. And people said to us, well, what did you know that no one else knew? And the answer was affordability. We knew that affordable housing was a scarce item, and that if you can buy a house for less than it would cost to build it, there's inherent value in it. And that's what then carried me over to starting to invest in the United States.
Which was a big thing there because you could buy properties that were for far less than you could build them, right?
Well, it's almost a glimpse of what might happen to the Australian property market. So Dave Bradley and I achieved our business objectives in 2006 and we shook hands and we went our separate ways. So I was the guy who went from 0 to 130 properties in 3.5 years and from 130 properties to 0 in 3.5 seconds, the signing of a pen. Because the deal Dave and I struck was that Dave kept the property portfolio.
Okay.
I kept propertyinvesting.com and he paid me a sum of money, lump sum, cash out.
Yep.
So I went from the guy who was, professional real estate investor to the guy who ran a training business and had a whole lot of money. So I had to then go back and figure out how I wanted to invest in real estate. So then I did some value add deals around Melbourne, built some units, built some office complexes, that kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
And then...
As a developer?
As a developer.
Yep.
As a syndicate with some other people, not just myself. And then what happened was at my own Millionaire Mega Conference, 3-day Mega Conference 2009, there was an American presenter who came out and talked on the topic of tax lien investing. Oh, yeah. Now, tax lien investing isn't something available in Australia, but it's basically property owners who don't pay their council rates. The council sells that debt off to investors for up to 18% return. And if you haven't repaid the debt after 2 years, the investor can foreclose on the home to get paid back. Which sounded interesting because I had a sum of money and was looking for a return and thought, well, let's go and check this out. Well, I went over to the United States, Halloween 2009, and I just never seen anything like it. It was an opportunity, but it was born out of despair. Foreclosures everywhere. It was a pretty horrible time to be there.
Well, there's been a few movies. I think it's 99 Homes is maybe one of them. So those signs on every house, on every block. Or was you saw that?
Yeah, the Big Short. Or
that was that was another one. Yeah, there was which is probably more the higher financial sort of at the banking level, but on the ground was you saw it. Yeah, right.
I was there. I saw it, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. That said, houses that were $110,000, $120,000, I was buying for $10,000, $12,000.
Yeah, wow.
And these are properties that would rent $400 per month at the front, $400 at the back. So they were duplexes, $800 a month, $12,000.
And what are we talking in terms of a quality of home?
West Wendouree, Tokoroa.
So again, that it's affordability.
It's a model that I had seen work twice before, so I had no hesitation jumping in boots and all. Now, I sold out of those homes about a year ago, $55,000, $60,000, $70,000. Made over $1 million US just by buying those houses. Also made money on the currency because I sent the money over when the dollar was higher and then the dollar went lower. It was an opportunity at the time because the market went on sale and I had the cash to take advantage of it.
And that's a secret, right? One of your strengths is to have money when you are bargaining. Well, cash to spend, right?
I think one of the secrets is there's no such thing as a secret. I think the more skilled you are and the more experienced you are, the easier it is to spot an opportunity emerging. Whereas the less skilled you are and the less experienced you are, you have to rely on someone else leading you to the opportunity and explaining the opportunity. And when you are in the latter camp, the market's already been picked over by those with the skill and experience. So the best you can hope for is a second-class deal.
From there, you moved into commercial real estate, which is when you started a fund.
That's right. So
You're smiling. So was that this is actually a pretty significant step in your career, isn't it? Because for the first time you went from your own money and educating people on what you'd been successful to taking other people's money, me being one of them.
Investing other people's money, not taking other people's money.
No,
There's a bit of a difference.
Taking other people's money, like mine, and investing it. So you were sort of you were putting your reputation on the line, right?
All right. So we can fast forward 3 years. 2009, I had bought the properties in the United States of America. 2010, the market started to stabilise. 2011, the market started to come back. And so I'm asking myself the question, all right, residential real estate's coming back. It doesn't look like Armageddon's going to last forever. What's the next opportunity? Because residential, that couldn't buy a $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 house there anymore. They've gone up in value. And talking to a mentor of mine, Stu Silver, who lives in the United States of America, commercial real estate lags residential, usually by 12 to 18 months.
That's just a theory based on history?
Principle.
Principle, okay.
Investing principle. Not an investing law,
yes,
but a guideline.
Okay.
So then it became a question of, all right, how can I make money out of commercial real estate in the United States of America? Well, I've only got so much money, I could probably buy one or two properties myself. And I started scratching my head and saying, look, I've been training people for more than 15 years, and one of my frustrations is I've been telling people about opportunities, but they haven't been doing anything about it. And people have been coming to me and saying, Steve, I've got money, can you invest my money for me? And I always say no. I'll teach you how to do it, but I won't do it for you.
Yeah.
Principally because of the laws in Australia around that, and also just the responsibility and the obligation. Well, this opportunity, commercial real estate, was so good. It was the closest thing that I'd ever seen to an absolute lay-down misère in investing. The Australian dollar was buying 90 cents plus US. Real estate commercial prices were a third or less of replacement value. The yields were a lot higher than what you could get on Australian real estate. So I went to a friend who worked, a guy I studied accounting with at university, Paul Harper, and I said, he was working in the financial planning field, and I said, Paul, if I was going to get some kind of managed investment up and running, what do I need to do? And he said, well, you need an Australian financial services license. So that then took me on a path of getting an Australian financial services license, buying a public company, getting the license changed from wholesale to retail, and then June 2012, Millionaire mega conference, put it out to my database and said, you guys have been asking me for 10 years or more to make an opportunity like this available. Here's the opportunity. Who wants to jump on board? Well, the first question everyone asked me was, this all sounds good. What kind of return am I going to get? And you can't give a number. ASIC won't allow you to give a number. So I had to say, I can't give you a number. I can only say, trust me. But it goes to show that I think the value of a good reputation and a demonstrable history of success, because on the back of Trust Me, I raised $30 million.
Yep.
Off the database, the propertyinvesting.com database, and that was enough to get going.
So that was just, here's what I'm doing.
Here's why it's a good idea.
Send me some money.
Well, who else wants to jump on board?
Right.
I'm on board. I think I'm willing to be the biggest investor in the fund.
Yep.
I'm not asking you to do something I'm not willing to do myself.
Yep.
But I think if I know anything in real estate, I
think this is right.
This looks good for these reasons. Not
Yep.
just trust me, gut feel, but here is the investing science behind how it would work.
Yep. So you raised the 30.
Raised the 30, went and invested the 30, closed off to new applications. And then once I could show people the property that we'd bought and what a great investment it was very easy to go from 30 to more, and then eventually 75, which was our cap, a self-imposed cap. And then we closed off.
Yep.
And so once a year now we redeem if people want out, and then we open it up to new investors or investors that want to top up.
So if the investment's closed, but you can reinvest your profits within the fund?
Well, you can reinvest your distributions while it's closed, but you can't top up while it's closed.
So where do the distributions come from?
So the distributions come from the rental income delivered from the real estate that effectively washes through back to investors.
Okay.
And then they can either take it as cash or they can say, hey, I'll just take some more units, please.
Yep.
But if Matt comes to $100,000 today and rings me up and says, Steve, I want to get in the fund, well, if we're not open, I have to say, Matt, we can't help you because we're full.
What's the reason for the cap? Because if you go from 0 to 30, from 30 to 75, and you are still attracting new investors because people, I assume, still call today and want in. Mm-hmm. Why not go to 100? Why not go to 200? Why not go to 300?
Well, when I'd started up the fund, I'd never done this before.
Yep.
And one of the legitimate due diligence questions that was asked was, well, if you've never done this before, run a managed investment scheme. I don't have a history in managed investments. Mm-hmm. My history is in accounting and auditing and then direct investing. Shouldn't you have a track record of success before we invest our money with you? So I said, well, yeah, that in an ideal world maybe, but you've got to start somewhere, and I've got the skills that I've got, and if you'd like to join me and have me do this, me and my team, then this is the opportunity.
Yep.
There's risk, but you have to assess the risk and decide whether it's a risk you want to take.
Yep.
But one of the dangers with investing, Matt, is when egos get ahead of themselves.
Yes.
And so by setting a cap at 75 million of unit holder capital plus debt, so that it's now 140 million of funds under management.
Yes.
But I knew it couldn't get so large as that my ego would get out of control.
So it forces you to be efficient with the money you have access to, right?
Indeed it does. So it was a self-protection mechanism to make sure that it remained about the investors and the investing and never about me.
So that was personally for you to keep your ego in check, that figure.
One of the dangers of money managers is if the money manager believes it's all about them. Mm-hmm. I believe that the managed investment scheme is about putting the investor first and everyone else comes second.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do that if you're the big man or the big woman in town and you've got to be number one and everyone has to be number two. So and I know myself pretty well, if I can look at myself and say, here are the potential Achilles heels that can trip you up, protect against them up front. So you've got safety mechanisms around accountability and transparency.
Yeah, interesting, yeah.
Then it stops, somewhat addresses, mitigates the risk of self-sabotage.
Okay.
So, for instance, I've had a couple of relationships with people, business relationships that have ended poorly, and I've found that they've ended poorly. One of the lessons, another saying, dare I say it, that when people think the rules don't apply to them, they're closer to the end than the start.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And
Makes
like
sense.
I had a business associate who cheated on his wife and said, well, it's okay for me to cheat on you at the time because I didn't feel that I loved you, but I loved you now, and so it's different.
Yeah.
And that's a head scratcher for me because, look, if I can't trust you to be faithful to your wife, how can I trust you with my money?
Yeah.
Like, maybe they're different. To me, they're not. Like, trust is trust is trust.
Yep.
So when you think the rules don't apply to you, when you think you can get in your car and drive down the road at 80 kilometres an hour rather than the speed limit of 60, well, you're probably going to have an accident.
Yeah.
Or you're probably going to get a speeding ticket.
That's a fair point, yeah.
Here's a wake-up call. The rules apply, and just operate within the rules and everything's all right. You don't. When someone lies, it's because the truth's not enough. Why isn't the truth enough?
Yeah, okay.
Just let the truth speak for itself. And if it's not enough, well, then you can say sorry or apologise.
And was there anything else that you built into the way you constructed the fund, or the other possible things that you thought would trip you up possibly?
Yeah, well, the accountability of having a board. I mean, I've got and I say this in love, I've got a member on my board who's a pain in the backside. But he's a dot the I, cross the T kind of guy. And you need to have someone like that in your team because you need to be accountable.
Yeah.
If you're not accountable, you'll start to believe that you can get away cutting corners, which is the start of collapse.
Makes a lot of sense. So you're now, how long into the fund are we? I don't even know how long it's been.
2017, started in 2012. I've said that we'll have a meeting in 2022 and decide whether or not we want to stick with it or wrap it up.
Actually, that's right. I recall now that there was a time limit on the duration of it. So you'll get to that point, as you just said, and then assess whether you continue to run the properties, whether you sell out. You've only committed to that point in time.
And there's a good learning lesson as to why there. When I set up the fund, I've found that when you do deals with people, the wrong way to do it is hold hands, skip off into the sunset, happily ever after. I've had some business relationships with people that have been like that, and they haven't worked out well because life changes. I've found a better way when you do deals with people, joint ventures or money partner relationships, is to do it for a finite period and or a finite outcome.
Okay.
And when you've reached that outcome, you wrap it up.
So you have an outcome, you have a time frame.
An outcome and or a time frame.
And or a time frame, okay. And you address all the things that you think may trip you up before you start.
Yeah. When I was working as an accountant with Dave somewhere else before we set up our own show and got into investing, we sat in front of a whiteboard and I said, Dave, I've got an analogy for you. And I drew up 2 stick figures on the whiteboard and a finishing line at the other end of the whiteboard, and one I drew some hurdles. The other one was just a sprint. I said, what's quicker, sprinting or hurdling? The answer is sprinting. And I said, well, if we can take away all the hurdles before we start the race, we end up sprinting, not hurdling. And so that's a philosophy that I apply to life. Before you get started, do a bit of forward planning and think about all the things that can go wrong and try and get rid of as many of them as you can, and you'll get to your goal sooner.
And you're not deferring your goal, you're actually speeding up the process by doing that, even though initially it seems like it's going to take longer. That'd be a fair call?
Yeah, it's almost like prayer. If you don't do it, it'll take longer. But if you take the time to pray to start off with, you'll find that your mindset is a lot clearer and you'll get to your goal a lot sooner. But you're just in such a hurry to get started, it becomes an afterthought. So coming back to the 10 years, for instance, I was 40 when we started up the fund. I'll be 50 when we have the meeting. And I said to people, I don't want to give you a guarantee for life.
Yeah.
But I do want to give you a guarantee so that you'll know that I'll stay with the fund, that I won't wake up on a Wednesday afternoon and decide that I want to shave my head and put on a robe and become a monk.
Yeah.
If I say I'm going to do it, I'll do it. I'll stick with it, and this is what I'll do.
Yeah.
But just know that we're only doing it for 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And
No,
then
fair.
in 10 years' time, we can all meet up, and if we want to go for longer, if I'm happy to recommit for another period of time, we can reassess. But if not, then we knew what we were doing when we got into it. Let's shake hands, high-five each other, and move on in life.
Are you happy with how the fund has performed?
I guess it's difficult to answer that question. Maybe if I could rephrase your question, if we could go back in time and say in 2013 that you'd have a property portfolio that was 95% leased up, that the returns were good to very good, that the Australian dollar had gone from 95 cents to 80 cents or lower, and that you had delivered a double-digit return for the investors each year, remembering that past performance is not a guarantee to future performance. No estimates are made.
Just to cover yourself, yeah.
Then I think you could always earn more, but, I mean, you're an investor in the fund. Are you happy?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy. It's been a real learning curve, the whole thing, to be honest.
And I'm the biggest investor in the fund, and while I'm disappointed of recent time the Australian dollar has gone back up, which has eaten away the profits to a certain extent, I'm happy with the long-term situation of where we are and the outlook. I think it's good. You can't buy properties in the United States for what we bought our properties for anymore.
I don't know, but I would believe that because I know some of the ones that you bought, and it's phenomenal.
We were
phenomenal
buying
stuff.
$25 a square foot when it would cost $70 plus per square foot to build it, and that doesn't include land or services. There was inherent value in what we did.
Do you prefer buying or selling?
Buying opens the transaction, selling closes the transaction. I don't mind either.
Okay.
Again, as Steve McKnight saying is, buying is the start, selling is the end. What you do in the middle is where you make your money.
And is there any what part of the process do you feel that you're really, really good at?
Well,
coming up with sayings for what you've done?
What do I think I'm really, really good at? I think I'm really, really good at making decisions.
Okay.
Now, whether it's choosing to buy or choosing not to buy if we find a piece of real estate that doesn't quite stack up, rather than sitting conflicted, I'm usually pretty good at making up my mind. All right, this is what we're going to do. What if you're wrong? We'll figure it out.
And do you make decisions quickly?
Yeah.
You do?
There was a bit of a pause. There was a bit of a deliberate pause.
Yeah, right. Got it.
No, I can tend to identify upsides and downsides pretty quickly.
Yep.
If you asked people, what's Steve McKnight's greatest strength? I would say resilience, determination, Certainly not good looks. Some people can sing, some people can dance, others can juggle. I can't do any of them. I just seem to be good at putting together investments.
Do you have a problem with changing your decision? Do you change decisions?
Yeah, if something happens along the way and you made a decision with the best evidence you had before you at the time, and then it comes to pass that maybe it didn't work out like you thought it would, of course, that's when you sell. I mean, we've sold a couple of properties that we bought in the fund because we bought them with an expectation of this, but this never happened. So rather than sit there in a puddle of pee wondering how we got there, we step out of the pee, we try and sort out the property, and if we can't, we sell it. Absolutely. Like, someone that can't say they've made a mistake is an ego-driven person, and I'm not a particularly ego-driven person. I'm happy to be transparent and say, we did that, it didn't work, didn't we? The first time it's a learning lesson. The second time it's a mistake.
And you want to learn from the first time, obviously.
Yeah.
Just a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. A question that I ask everybody: if you could have one law changed, what would it be?
Abolish poker machines.
Okay. Because?
Poker machines are a device that is designed to be addictive. It's a zero-sum game. So in order for a poker machine venue to make money, its member must lose money. How can you be a club to be about your members when what you want to do is fleece them out of money? I think after drugs, gambling addiction is the second biggest reason for crime. I think when you look at the damage that a poker machine does, it is at least, if not more, damaging than cigarettes. And I think that the world would be a better place if we made the moral call that the machines are dangerous and we don't want them.
I can feel in your answer, does that come from seeing it personally? Is that?
No one in my family has been an addict of poker machines. Look, I just think, and when I started off life, I think I would have, my heritage is a Liberal voter and a Liberal supporter. Mm-hmm. But what I've realised is that capitalism needs to be controlled, because if you don't control capitalism, it's a hungry, greedy beast that just eats anything in its path. So when we look at what a poker machine is and what a poker machine does, people say it's entertaining, and it may be.
Yeah.
But is the upside benefit of the entertainment worth the downside damage that it does to the community? And I think any objective person would have to look at it and say no.
Yeah.
When the harm it does is greater than the benefit that it brings, we probably don't need it. So the idea of creating a machine that blinks a certain way to release dopamine, that makes noises like you're winning when you're losing, that is proven to cause addiction in people for the sole benefit of a corporation to make money, needs to be controlled.
Yeah.
And when people can't see that it needs to be controlled, when the government's so addicted to revenue from gambling, when the ALP is the only political party in the Western world, I understand, that actually runs its own clubs and poker machines, so it's conflicted.
Yeah.
When the Liberal Party receives massive donations from hotels and associations that get their money from poker machines, we've lost sight that at the end of the day, we should be for people and about people, and we're not. We're for profit and about companies, and I just don't think that's the society that I want to be a part of. So I'd like to make a stand against it.
Fair enough. No, that's a good point that you make. Do you have any book or documentary recommendations, apart from your own, because you've written a few in your time? How many books have you written? 5?
I don't keep a count. 0 to 130, $1 million in property in 12 months, which is now out of print because one of the guys in the book ended up being a shyster and going to jail, which is a pity. But it goes to show that it was written with the best of intent. But when I found out that he was using the book to gain credibility, I took it out of publication. It was the only thing I could do. So that one's not around anymore. 0 to 260, which is how life looks after you've made your fortune. And then I wrote a book called Millionaire, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You can see they're all money themes, can't you? And then From Zero to Financial Freedom, How to Do It Today for people who are starting off. And then I believe that there'll be a book And I thought I kind of promised I'd never write a book. It goes to show you should never make a promise. But I can see a book coming out around the Money Master concept, and then a program teaching people around that.
It seems that you've had a book that you've used as a marketing tool. Would that be a fair call for each of your ventures, stages of your investing life?
Yeah, it's funny how it works out. When I wrote my first book, I did it because it was fun, something I'd never done before. It was, breaking into the frontier of, and it was such a great experience because it did so well. It's been Australia's best-selling business book ever. It sold 300,000 copies.
That's crazy, yeah.
A guy who barely passed Year 12 English ends up with the best-selling business book written by an Australian. It's quite a story. But then after I wrote the first one, and I tapped it out on my keyboard, and after the publisher and we went around marketing it, they turned around and they said, you have to understand you'll never have a book this successful again. And I said, well, there's a challenge.
Yeah.
But they were right. It was a book for its time. It caught the public's imagination. So since then, I've ended up saying, look, a book is a business card that people pay for.
Okay.
And it just needs to be enough to get people interested in wanting to know more.
Okay.
If you write everything down in a book, it becomes too deep and meaningful for people to really chew their way through.
So when you write a book to use as a business card, as you've just said, is it a pretty high level thing?
No, I think that we have to learn from history here and understand that the best way to teach people is with stories.
Okay.
And so what I like to do in the books that I write is make them entertaining and teach people why they don't think they're learning. And then at the end of it, they go, wow, look at all these new things I know. And it's because it's been a great, engaging read. It's not fiction.
Yep.
It's not a Clive Cussler novel or anything else like that, but it's entertaining, it engages you, and it gets you thinking. That's the sort of material I like to write.
How long did it take you to put that first book together, out of interest?
I just punched it out in a couple of months on the keyboard.
Oh, really? Because
it's very easy to write from a first-person narrative.
Yeah, okay.
The crazy things that happen when you go and buy 130 properties. I mean, imagine all the stories there are.
Have you got a favourite story, or maybe a best deal we can finish on?
Oh, I've got maybe the story that I like to tell because it's a little bit shocking is over in the United States of America, looking at buying a 5-plex for $40,000. So that's 5 units for $40,000, $8,000 a door, pretty cheap, right?
Yeah.
And you couldn't get deals like this anymore. The market's gone up, and that would probably now be a $200,000 property.
Right.
So I turn up to do the inspection with the agent. The agent's name's Mike Komar, and knocks on the door. Sound effects. Knocks on the door. The tenant comes to open the door to show me through one of these little units, one of these plexes. And as the door swings open, Mike steps back, right, away from the door.
Right.
And he kind of shepherds me, gently pushes me forward and says, I'll let you take a look at this one, Steve. Well, any time an agent does that is usually a signal that something nasty is about to happen.
Yeah.
And walking into that unit, it was like being hit in the face with a wet fish. It stank.
Right.
Putrid.
Yeah.
Like breathing thick, putrid air. And as I'm saying hello to the tenant and having a conversation with the tenant while trying to figure out where can this smell be possibly coming from. Do you like living here? Yes. How are you with the neighbours? Well, the neighbours are fine. And then I noticed out of the corner of my eye as I'm asking these questions, a cat litter box. And I'm thinking, oh, there's probably where the smell's coming from. That's probably dried, petrified cat poo.
Yep.
Anyway, then I noticed, well, if there's a cat box, there's probably cats. So then I start seeing cat tails appear. Might be 8 cats. And this is only a small 1-bedroom unit with 8 cats in it. And I'm thinking, well,
there's your smell.
I think I'm starting to envisage a problem here. And then as I'm looking at the kitty litter tray and seeing the cat's tails, I noticed that the floor is shimmering. And I'm thinking, what's going on? How can the floor be shimmering? And then as I'm looking at the floor trying to focus on it, I notice the walls are shimmering as well. And I'm thinking, am I getting a migraine? Because I suffer from migraines, and one of the early symptoms of a migraine is
you get dizzy,
the shimmering vision pattern change, the ocular disturbances. And I think, am I getting a migraine? I'm closing my eyes and I'm opening them, shaking my head a little bit. So I noticed the floor's sort of moving and the walls are moving or shimmering, and then I noticed that the ceiling is shimmering as well. And I'm like, what's going on? And remember, this is all happening pretty quick. It's not happening as slowly as I'm explaining.
Yes,
it.
yes.
I'm just doing this for dramatic effect.
Yeah.
And then just as I realise what all the shimmering is, I can feel something crawling up my leg. Cockroaches. Little German cockroaches. Thousands of them.
Everywhere.
Crawling all over the kitty litter, all over the floor, all over the walls,
Gosh.
all over the ceiling, and now all over me.
Yeah.
Up my leg. And then just as I realise that there's a cockroach on me, the tenant says the obvious. As you can see, I've got a bit of a cockroach problem here. I said, really? I hadn't noticed. And she said, yeah, I've been to hospital twice because I've had cockroaches crawl inside my ear canal.
Oh, God.
Now, how this ended up, I ended up buying the property.
I was going to say, I bet you bought this, yeah.
I ended up, see, I've got another saying for you. When you buy problems and sell solutions, you can make money.
Yes, yeah.
If you buy solutions, the only way you can make money is if the whole market goes up. And so what you want to do as a real estate investor is find a problem that you can fix cost effectively, where the perceived value is greater than the cost. And it might be putting a tenant in a place or renovating a property or whatever. And there's a number of different strategies that I teach. But when you add value, you can make money.
Yes.
So what I did with this place is that we got all the tenants out. We tried to bomb the cockroaches, and they didn't work. So then we had to erect a tent over the whole site and gas it.
Yeah.
And then we renovated the units. And while renovating the units, 6 44-gallon drums worth of little cockroaches came out.
Oh, my God.
Over 1 million of them, I reckon. They were shoveling them out of the wall cavity into the 44-gallon drums.
How does it get that bad to start with?
Infestation. Just infestation.
1, 2, 3, and then multiple. Yeah, okay.
So I reckon I've bought, I don't keep a tally, but it's probably, 500 plus properties over the time that I've been investing. And I, in the words of my mentor, Stu Silver, when you buy that much real estate, sooner or later you see everything, and sometimes twice. But I never want to see a cockroach-infested house a second time crawling up my leg. For the rest of the day, I felt like I had been swimming in poo and just couldn't wait to get to a shower and scrub my skin. It was really a horrible experience. I've been through demon-possessed houses. I've been through houses where people have been growing marijuana in the roof. You name it, it's probably happened to me.
So you're on the ground, pound the pavement, sort of, you get out amongst it and you see this stuff. You're not buying unseen.
Absolutely.
You like that part of it?
That's the adventure.
Yeah, right, okay. Cool.
And some people say they hate dealing with real estate agents. I love it. I love the game. I love the negotiation game.
Yep.
I maybe when you asked before what's something I'm really, really good at, I'm probably pretty good at negotiating.
Yep.
You can always learn more, as you know, but I think with the fund I've been able to negotiate some great deals.
Yep.
And the people who are on the other side of the transactions, I'm not nickel and diming people. I just, try and find a way to negotiate an outcome that works for them and works for me.
So coming back to the question, did we have any recommendations, or was that the first book is your recommendation?
Absolutely. Look, I think the older the book, the more it stands to time. Think and Grow Rich, Greatest Man in Babylon, are books. I think if you're not a good reader, audiobooks these days are the way to go. Subscribe to Audible and just listen to them in the car. Other than that, the classics, Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has some big flaws in it, but is a good read, particularly if you're not into accounting. It can help you to understand how to put together a P&L and a balance sheet. What else have we got out there?
Flaws, you said. Can I dig a little bit on that one? Flaws, you said in the book?
Yeah, I mean, Keith Cunningham, who was Robert Kiyosaki's mentor, has said that there's no such thing as a rich dad.
Okay.
Rich dad's a bit of a tapestry of people that Robert might have known, but I've never asked. Right. I've never asked Robert personally.
Okay. Yep.
Whether that's the case. So I've never known if it's true or not. But look, I know enough about the wealth creation industry to say that Robert Kiyosaki's a good guy to learn from, but don't make the mistake of saying you want to be Robert Kiyosaki, or don't make the mistake of saying you want to be Steve McKnight. Learn from Steve McKnight, learn from Robert Kiyosaki, learn from others, but run your own race.
Good advice. If someone wants to find out more about you or what you're doing, propertyinvesting.com, is that the best place to head?
Yeah, look,
at this point?
I'm at a stage in life where I'm not looking to do more. I'm probably looking to do a little bit less.
Okay, so you're thinking of calling Steve? Don't.
Look, investing, as I mentioned, is the tool to achieve an outcome. The outcome that I wanted was to not work as an accountant anymore. I'm at a stage in life where I'm successful. The properties that I've bought have made money. I don't need to work anymore. I work when I want, how I want, with who I want, for as long as I want. And that means that I take on projects as I want to, not as I have to. So, for instance, I don't do as many seminars. I'm thinking about setting up a second commercial property fund to buy property in Australia.
Yeah.
But I don't have to do it. I'm looking for the opportunity to be right to do it. So people say to me, Steve, when's your next seminar? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know if I want to run another seminar.
Right.
But if you'd like to know more about the way I invest, if you'd like to get some resources, some free resources that I've put together, then you just need to join the membership at propertyinvesting.com. As I mentioned, it won't cost you anything, and that will be the start of our journey together. And then I'd invite you to come to our once-a-year 3-day mega conference. And if you're lucky enough to see that I'm running a seminar because there's something going on, then try and come to that and learn some more.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for carving out a little piece of your day to help with this. Really appreciate it. And as always, it's been a blast.
Thanks for thinking that I've got something to contribute, Matt. It's an honour. And for the listeners, if I've been able to help you in any way, then I just hope that it's a blessing and that you go on to achieve your full life potential. Remember, aim for extraordinary and end up ordinary, rather than aiming for ordinary and ending up anti-ordinary.
Cheers, Steve. Thank you very much. Hey, everybody. It's Matt again. Thanks for listening. Just a couple of things before you guys clock off. You can get all Trench Talk episodes at xrm.com.au/podcast. You can also sign up for other goodies at the same site. Just plonk your email in there and you are covered. That's X for X-ray, R for Romeo, M for Mike.com.au/podcast. If you really like what I'm bringing you, please head to iTunes, subscribe to this show and leave a review right there. And lastly, if you want to contact me directly, type the @ symbol followed by Mr. Matt Reynolds into your search bar and you'll find all the social links. Goodbye.